Title: Mocked for carrying a worn briefcase. He reveals he owns the company. Humility often goes unnoticed, especially when hidden beneath a threadbare exterior. Ethan Marshall, a self-made billionaire who had once lived on the streets, walked into his company headquarters for an unannounced inspection. He was not dressed like the CEO of a multinational conglomerate. Instead, he wore a plain button-up shirt, well-worn slacks, and carried an old leather briefcase, a relic from his college days when money was scarce, and dreams were his only currency. What happened next would forever alter the dynamics of his corporation and remind everyone why he had built the company in the first place. But to understand the day's events, we must start from the beginning. Ethan had always been a man of principle. His rise to success had been fueled by a relentless drive, but his journey from poverty to prosperity had taught him that wealth wasn't defined by outward appearances. On this particular day, he decided to test whether his company upheld the values it professed: respect, equality, and opportunity for all. Ethan stood in front of the towering glass building that bore the name Marshall Innovations. The nameplate gleamed in the sunlight, but the man who had founded the empire looked every bit the unassuming outsider. Employees buzzed around him, oblivious to his identity, as he made his way to the reception desk. "Excuse me," Ethan said, addressing a sharply dressed receptionist. "I'm here for an appointment with the department heads." The receptionist barely looked up from her computer. Her expression was one of mild irritation as she scanned Ethan from head to toe. "Do you have a visitor's badge?" she asked tersely. "No, but I'm the—" Before Ethan could finish, she waved dismissively. "You can't just walk in here. This is a private building. Go around the back if you're looking for deliveries." Ethan smiled politely, choosing not to correct her immediately. "I understand. Could you at least check my name in the appointment system?" "Ethan Marshall." The receptionist's brow furrowed, clearly unimpressed. "Listen, Mr. Marshall," she said with audible skepticism. "Even if you have an appointment, you should know better than to show up like that. This is a professional environment." Ethan nodded, maintaining his calm. "I appreciate the feedback. Could you still confirm my meeting?" With a sigh, the receptionist grudgingly searched the database. When she found his name, her face paled slightly, but she quickly masked it with a forced laugh. "Right, well, anyone can claim to be someone important," she said, her tone still condescending. "I'll need to call security to verify. Just wait here." In the meantime, Ethan took a seat in the lobby. Employees passed him without a second glance, or worse, threw judgmental stares his way. A pair of junior associates nearby whispered loudly enough for him to overhear. "Must be another vendor trying to pitch something," one of them said, nodding toward Ethan's worn briefcase. "Yeah, or someone trying to sneak in for free coffee," the other snickered. Ethan adjusted the briefcase on his lap, reminding himself of his purpose. He knew he didn't fit the stereotype of a CEO, but that was precisely the point. He wanted to see his company through the eyes of an outsider, to understand the culture that had developed within its walls. Escalation in the lobby. When security arrived, two guards approached Ethan with stern expressions. "Sir, we were told you're causing a disturbance," one of them said. Ethan raised an eyebrow. "A disturbance? I'm just sitting here, waiting for my meeting." "Well, without proper credentials, you can't stay here," the other guard said firmly. "Do you have any form of identification?" Ethan reached into his briefcase and retrieved his ID badge, but the guards barely glanced at it. "Nice try," one of them scoffed. "Anyone can print a fake badge these days." By now, a small crowd had gathered, employees curious about the commotion. Whispers spread rapidly, most assuming Ethan was either lost or a fraud. "Why would someone like him have a meeting here?" a woman murmured. "He doesn't even look like he belongs." Ethan could feel the weight of their stares, but he refused to let the humiliation rattle him. He stood up and addressed the guards calmly. "If you doubt my identity, perhaps you could call my assistant, Amanda Lewis. She'll confirm who I am." The guards exchanged skeptical looks, but agreed to make the call. As they did, An ambitious middle manager named Greg Stanton, who had been watching from a distance, decided to intervene. "Excuse me," Greg said, stepping forward. "I don't know what this guy is trying to pull, but he's clearly not supposed to be here. Let's just escort him out and get back to work." "Actually, Mr. Stanton," Ethan replied evenly, "I'd recommend waiting for the call to go through before making assumptions." Greg frowned, confused as to how this man knew his name. Before he could respond, Amanda's voice echoed from the phone speaker. "Security? Why are you calling about Mr. Marshall? He's the CEO. Let him through immediately." A stunned silence fell over the lobby. The guard stepped back, their faces a mix of shock and embarrassment. Greg's mouth hung open as realization dawned. I didn't realize," Greg stammered. Ethan looked around at the now humbled crowd. "It's interesting," he said, his voice steady but firm, "how quickly people judge based on appearances. This briefcase," he held it up, "has been with me through every step of building this company. It may look old, but it's a symbol of perseverance and hard work." From here, the story would delve into Ethan addressing the toxic culture within his company, holding a meeting with the staff to emphasize the importance of humility and respect, and introducing initiatives to foster inclusivity and empathy. Employees would reflect on their behavior, and Ethan's leadership would inspire meaningful change within the organization. The lobby was still. All eyes were on Ethan Marshall, the man they had mocked only moments ago. The worn briefcase in his hand seemed to radiate significance now, a symbol of a story none of them fully understood. Ethan remained calm, surveying the crowd with a measured gaze. His presence, understated yet commanding, spoke volumes. Finally, he broke the silence. "I didn't come here today to make a scene," Ethan began, his voice steady but laced with unmistakable authority. "I came to see for myself what kind of culture we've built, and I must admit, what I've seen is disappointing." He turned toward the receptionist, who now sat frozen in her chair. "You," Ethan said, his tone soft but direct. What was it you told me earlier? That this is a professional environment, and I should know better than to walk in like this." The receptionist flushed, struggling to find her voice. I didn't mean to." Ethan raised a hand to stop her. "You did mean it, and you're not alone. Many of you judged me the moment you saw me, not knowing who I was or what I represented. You saw an old briefcase, plain clothes, and assumed I didn't belong. That mindset is a problem." The conference room revelation. By now, word had spread throughout the building, and employees from other departments were gathering near the lobby. Ethan, aware of the growing audience, gestured to a nearby manager. "Greg," he said, addressing the middle manager who had attempted to escalate the situation earlier. "Since you're here, why don't you help me call an impromptu meeting in the main conference room? I think it's time for a company-wide discussion." Greg nodded, his face pale. "Of course, Mr. Marshall." Ethan smiled faintly. "And please, drop the formalities. You didn't seem too concerned about them a few minutes ago." As the crowd dispersed to the conference room, Ethan lingered for a moment, watching the employees shuffle past him. Their curiosity and unease were palpable. He had no intention of humiliating anyone further, but he knew that this was a teaching moment the company desperately needed, a lesson in leadership. The main conference room was packed, with employees lining the walls and spilling into the hallway. Ethan stood at the head of the long table, his briefcase placed deliberately in front of him. Its worn leather and frayed edges seemed almost out of place amidst the sleek, modern decor. "I'll keep this brief," Ethan began, his voice carrying effortlessly over the murmurs. "Many of you know our company's mission statement, innovation through integrity. But today, I've seen behavior that contradicts that ideal." He let the words sink in before continuing. "This company wasn't built by people in expensive suits or flashy cars. It was built by people who believed in a vision, who worked hard, and who treated each other with respect, regardless of status or appearance." Ethan's gaze swept across the room. "I've been in your shoes. I've been the one at the bottom, overlooked and underestimated. And I've carried this briefcase," he patted it lightly, "since my first job interview. It's a reminder where I started and what I value." One of the employees raised a tentative hand. "Mr. Marshall," she asked, her voice tinged with guilt, "why didn't you correct us earlier? Why not just tell us who you were?" Ethan smiled faintly. "Because the way you treated me when you thought I was nobody reveals more than how you treat me now. It's easy to show respect to someone you know as power. True character is how you treat someone when you think they have none." Rebuilding the company culture. Ethan leaned forward, his hands resting on the table. "This isn't just about today. It's about a culture that's developed here, a culture where appearances seem to matter more than actions. That's not what this company stands for, and it's not what I stand for." He took a deep breath, his expression softening. "I don't want anyone to feel humiliated or singled out. Instead, I want us to learn from this. Starting today, we're going to make changes." The room buzzed with curiosity as Ethan outlined his plan. Respect training. All employees, including management, would participate in mandatory workshops on workplace respect and inclusivity. Open door policy. A direct line to senior leadership, including Ethan himself, for employees to voice concerns or suggestions without fear of judgment. Anonymous feedback. A system for employees to report instances of bias or discrimination. Community days. Opportunities for employees to volunteer in underserved communities, reminding them of the importance of humility and giving back. A moment of reflection. As the meeting concluded, Ethan invited employees to share their thoughts. Many spoke up, some apologizing for their behavior, while others admitted that the day's events had opened their eyes. The receptionist, her face still red with embarrassment, approached Ethan after the meeting. "Mr. Marshall," she began hesitantly, "I'm so sorry for the way I treated you. I didn't mean to be rude. I just didn't realize." Ethan nodded, his expression kind. "I accept your apology. But remember, it's not about realizing who someone is after the fact. It's about treating everyone with the same respect, no matter what." Legacy of the briefcase. Over the following weeks, the atmosphere at Marshall Innovations began to shift. Employees were more conscious of their interactions, more willing to look beyond appearances. Ethan's story and his briefcase became a symbol within the company, a reminder of the values that had built their success. Ethan continued to walk the halls unannounced, blending in with the employees he had once been among. And while some still whispered about the CEO with the worn briefcase, most understood its true significance, a testament to resilience, humility, and the power of seeing beyond the surface. Weeks after the incident in the lobby, Marshall Innovations had transformed in subtle but profound ways. Employees no longer rushed to judge others by their appearances. Conversations were warmer, smiles more genuine, and an air of mutual respect began to replace the once cold, hierarchical atmosphere. One day, Ethan called for an all-hands meeting. This time, it wasn't in response to a problem, but to mark a milestone. Standing at the same spot he had weeks before, his presence felt even more commanding. But there was no tension in the room, only anticipation. "I've had time to reflect on what happened that day," Ethan began, his gaze meeting theirs. "And while I was disappointed at first, I've also been encouraged by how much progress we've made since." He paused, placing his worn briefcase on the table in front of him. "This briefcase has become a bit of a symbol, hasn't it? But it's not just about me or my story. It's about the lesson it carries. The lesson." Ethan stepped closer to the employees, speaking with calm authority. "Every one of us carries a briefcase of sorts. It may not be made of leather or frayed at the edges, but it holds our journey, our struggles, our experiences, our dreams. Sometimes that briefcase is invisible, but it's always there. And just because you can't see someone's value at first glance doesn't mean it isn't there." He looked across the room, his eyes kind but serious. "The world has enough judgment and division. What we need is compassion, the ability to look beyond the surface, to see each other as people first, not just roles or appearances. The room was silent, the weight of his words settling on every heart. Respect isn't something you give selectively. It's a habit, a principle. If you make it a cornerstone of how you live and work, you'll not only uplift others, you'll grow yourself a new chapter. Ethan's message left a lasting impression. Employees began to share their own stories of challenges overcome, of lessons learned, and the company grew closer as a result. One day, an employee approached Ethan with a request. "Mr. Marshall," she said, holding a fresh leather briefcase in her hands. "We wanted to give you this as a token of our gratitude, but we hope you'll keep your old one too. It reminds us of where we've been and how far we've come." Ethan smiled, touched by the gesture. "Thank you," he said, placing his hand on his old briefcase. "I'll keep this one always. It's proof that success isn't about what you carry on the outside. It's about what you carry within." The takeaway: the story of Ethan Marshall and his worn briefcase spread far beyond the walls of Marshall Innovations. It became a parable about humility, respect, and the danger of judging others by appearances. In the end, the lesson was clear. True value lies not in outward appearances, but in the character and potential of every individual. Respect costs nothing, but it can change everything. And for Ethan, his worn briefcase became more than a symbol of his journey. It became a reminder to everyone he met. Always look deeper. You never know the story behind the person you see.